Hey guys, my name is Rick. My ex-girlfriend simulated an injury to attract my attention, but unfortunately, she's attracted to someone else. At the beginning of this story, I was 23. I'd just graduated from college, had a lot of debt, and huge ambitions. So, I moved to San Francisco, hoping to start a successful career. After a while, I was hired by one cool advertising agency as an assistant. When I first met my boss, Rachel, she was sitting in her office with a nail technician who painted her nails. At the same time, she was having a Skype call with the company's president and yelling at him, asking for higher budgets. Rachel was very pretty and passionate. From the very first day, she gave me a long to-do list and demanded perfection, but I didn't mind. One evening, I urgently printed fresh designs and brought them to Rachel's house, just like she asked. She was flirting with me, and eventually, we spent that night together. We started an affair, and after a while, she asked me to move into her place. Rachel's offer was very seductive. On the one hand, I could save money on my rent. On the other, her house was very beautiful. When I moved in, Rachel threw away almost all of my stuff without even asking me. She told me that her boyfriend shouldn't look like a hobo. The next day, she invited a personal shopper over, and we went shopping together and purchased new clothing for me. I tried on thousands of items and felt exhausted. I could barely afford to buy all these things, but Rachel hinted that I was going to get a promotion soon. After shopping, she took me to the hairdresser. I got a haircut, a beard, and eyebrow design, a manicure, a pedicure, and hair removal in the most sensitive places on my body, if you know what I mean. Rachel insisted. I was screaming like a baby. Then for my birthday, she prepared a special gift. Tutorials, a series of royal etiquette lessons. I spent my free time memorizing all kinds of forks and knives and contemporary art history to prevent disgracing my girlfriend or something. That is how possessed I was. Okay, maybe I was also trying really hard because I was hoping to get that promotion. I felt like I was working for Rachel 24/7, but it paid off. After a month, she made me an account manager, and my salary was raised. After a year, I looked like a completely different person. My college friends barely even recognized me when we had an alumni meeting. I went there alone and met Jane, a waitress and art student. I accidentally pushed her and she spilled a few glasses. I apologized and we had a brief conversation. Before leaving, I asked for her number, telling her that I maybe had a job for her. Honestly, I didn't have any job for her. I just liked her. And I was so sick of Rachel's tough love by that time. So I asked Jane out, and we had a great time, roller skating in the park and eating junk food. Oh, I missed that so much in my relationship. Jane was bisexual, and her last girlfriend cheated on her, and it broke her heart. So she told me that she wouldn't date me, as long as I was in a relationship with someone else. When I returned from my first date with Jane, I found Rachel taking a bubble bath. She asked me to massage her feet. While massaging them, I told her that I was very unhappy and suggested that we break up. Her reaction was passive-aggressive at best. She said, "Of course you can go, Rick, but we both know that you will come back." And then she turned on relaxation music and continued her beauty routine. I packed my bags quickly and headed to my friend's home. Rachel didn't even say goodbye. I was humiliated, but I was free. Rachel left for a long business trip to Miami, which was perfect. I had concerns that she might sabotage my career to get revenge, but she didn't. Meanwhile, Jane and I became a couple and began to live together. We even got a cat together. When Rachel returned from her journey, she overloaded me with work on a new project, so I could barely spend any time with Jane. She would call me in the middle of the night to discuss business. Moreover, Rachel began to make attempts to seduce me again in the workplace. I tried to ignore her hints and brought Jane to the corporate Christmas party to clarify that I was in a relationship. When Rachel saw us, she got furious. My colleagues asked me to break the piñata and blindfolded me. It took some time. When I finally broke it and took off my mask, Jane was already gone, and Rachel looked very satisfied. I found Jane at home, packing her bags and crying. At the party, Rachel took her aside and said that I'd had an affair with every girl in our office. And then she tried to seduce Jane. Rachel said that she was bisexual, but that didn't mean that she can touch my girlfriend. I apologized for not telling Jane that Rachel had been my ex, but Jane wouldn't talk to me at all and left to spend the holidays at her parents' house in the country. On New Year's Eve, Rachel suddenly knocked on my door. I guess someone from the office had blabbed and said that I was spending holidays by myself. She was drunk and suggested that I go to a luxurious party on a rooftop with her. I gave Rachel a ride, said goodbye, and drove to the west to get Jane. It took around 4 hours, but I finally found her parents' home, kissed her, and told her Happy New Year. She was glad to run away from her boring folks and forgave me pretty easily. We spent a beautiful New Year's together. In April, Jane and I borrowed a trailer to go on a camping trip because Jane loved nature and I loved Jane. We'd been driving for 3 hours there, and Jane posted some pictures on her social media. Suddenly, I received a call from Rachel. She needed me to fly to Miami with her to impress a life-changing strategic client. She threatened to fire me otherwise, so I had no choice. We had to turn around. Jane was very upset, but I promised to take her on an even better vacation afterwards. My presence at the meeting in Miami ended up being optional. I didn't even say a word, but we got the contract and celebrated. Later that night, Rachel came over to my room in a gorgeous dress and hinted that I should dump Jane and come back home. And by home, she meant her house, of course. She tried to kiss me, but I rejected her. It pissed her off. She yelled that she was going to fire me and destroy my entire career. Then she slammed the door and left. I returned home and told Jane everything. We began to look for a new job for me. In the next month, I was hired by a good company. Luckily, my new boss knew Rachel and was familiar with her temper. When I was leaving the office, Rachel forbade my colleagues to arrange a goodbye party for me. That was pretty mean, but I forgave her. I finally felt free. I did well at my new job and got to spend a lot more time with Jane. We relocated to a new studio apartment. I enjoyed my new life and was looking forward to taking Jane on that camping vacation that I owed her. But then, suddenly, Rachel called me. She had broken her leg and she needed me to come over immediately. Nobody else was eager to help her, and she was begging me and crying. I felt very sorry for her and got there as soon as possible. She was laying on her couch in her elegant, silky pajamas with a cast on her right leg. Rachel had already fired her nurse because she was rude and unprofessional. I've never seen her so weak and vulnerable, and I kind of liked that. I helped Rachel around the house, fed her fish, and we spent some time together watching TV shows. Before leaving, I carried her in my arms to the bed, and I heard the words, "Thank you," from her for the first time in my life. I began visiting Rachel on a regular basis to make sure that she was fine. One Saturday night, she was very sad. I didn't want to leave her alone, and we spent all night talking about her tough childhood and her anger issues. Then, I took her to a park to see the sunrise on an observation deck. She was holding my hand and hugged me like an old friend. Unfortunately, when I arrived home, Jane was furious. She saw Rachel's Instagram stories with the sunrise and me. Jane was crying and packing my bags. She kicked me out that morning. I decided to stay with my friend Ted for a while. I was sure that Jane would forgive me. The next day at work, I received a huge box of cakes and chocolate sweets from my former client. I decided to bring that stuff to Rachel because she liked that brand. I didn't warn her about my sudden visit. I noticed something strange as I was parking my car. Rachel was standing on her two healthy legs, in shorts, in front of the window. She walked as if her right leg had never been broken. She had been lying to me this whole time. I had to go and see Jane immediately. She agreed to have coffee with me. I told her about Rachel's hustle and suggested an exposure plan. Jane was still angry, but intrigued. The next day, I paid a visit to Rachel. She was lying in her bed. With her cast, of course. I left the bedroom, threw a punching bag from the stairs to stage my fall, and made a few loud screams. Rachel panicked and called my name from the bedroom, but I didn't answer. Jane was sitting on a couch downstairs. Rachel hesitated for a minute and took off her fake cast. She ran to rescue me and saw Jane and me downstairs, alive, and laughing at her. Rachel got very confused and explained to me that she was lonely and desperate. I didn't mean to hurt us. She was begging us to forgive her and to stay for dinner. Well, we had a dinner together, and it went surprisingly well. Jane and Rachel liked each other. They discussed fashion and looked at Rachel's art book collection like old friends. Later that night, I asked Jane to accept me back, but she told me she needed some time. I was absent for 4 weeks because of a few business trips. When I came back, I bought a ring and asked Jane out for a date. When I saw her, she looked different. Her style reminded me of Rachel. Jane didn't accept my ring and talked to me coldly. She'd met someone else. And that someone else was, guess who? Rachel. Jane moved in with Rachel and took our cat. Yes, my ex had failed to get me back, so she stole my girlfriend instead. Now I wonder if she forces Jane to get regularly waxed,